Hi everyone, Materim here again with another narrative battle report, and this one proved to be a very strange game, but highly entertaining, and I hope you enjoy it. Tonight we introduce the Tomb Kings to our narrative, and they will start by taking on the Dwarves in a 2,000 point dawn attack scenario. The dwarves along the ridges of Karak Nor watched over the horizon. Trade had been good lately, as caravans bound to and from Bretonia had been flowing the past few months. What the human king was doing was of no concern to them, only that wealth and a sense of purpose had been restored to the Hammerfells. King Ogrim had pledged forces to help defend the stronghold as well, allowing their queen to stay safe and hidden within the walls, while she awaited the arrival of the next king of the Hammerfells. Things had been quiet. Almost too quiet. It was dawn when the first motion came. First a small banner on the horizon, and the sound of clacking echoed through the hills. Not the sounds of normal horses from the Bretonian caravan, but the clacking of bone against rock. Sickening crunches of crackling bone began to emerge from the small valley near Karak Nor. The dead from battles generations ago began to emerge from their dirt and rock-covered burial sites. Just as the sun began to rise, the original sounds of the clacking revealed its source. Chariots pulled by horses slain long ago charged at the dwarven encampment. Projectiles from outside the camp crashed into the dwarves. Skulls from the dead ages ago screamed as they splintered on the ground. Upon the lead chariot, Prince Telek Utan pointed at the mountainside and pushed his skeletal forces towards their prize, the vaults beneath where the Dawi stood. The Tomb Kings had returned to claim what was theirs. So this was our Valley for Dawn Attack scenario. As you can see, a lot of water here, and it really plays big into the game. The lake there in the center is a poison lake, the necrotic ooze, I think it is. But much more important is that the river that stretches, about a third of the board, ended up being a river of light. So that had a huge impact on the game, and you'll see what I mean as we get to it. So the dwarves ended up getting very lucky in their deployment rolls for Dawn Attack. The only thing that really was kind of out of position here were the hammerers, the unit of 20 hammerers you see towards the bottom of the screen. They were in the right end, and so he put them as close to the middle as he could. But there are 20 hammerers there with full command. Hanging out with them is Garen Odheim, the Thane BSB, with the Master Rune of Grungi, great weapon and a shield. In the center is the cannon on top of the hill. It has the Rune of Forging on it. Then on the bottom of the hill we have a unit of 20 Longbeards with full command, shields, and the Rune of Stoicism. Next to that in the black is an organ gun with the Rune of Accuracy and the Rune of Forging. And then next to that, kind of all crammed into that one side, we have his Rune Lord, Graw's Anvil Hand, with the Master Rune of Gromval on the Anvil of Doom, because Michael is a glutton for punishment. The Master Rune of Balance, and a great weapon. There's also a unit of 20 Thunderers there with full commands and shields. And a Gyrocopter with the Vanguard special rule, as well as a Gyro Bomber. So he ended up getting a lot of his forces piled into this one corner, which frankly, from what he said, was kind of good for him. All of his shooting was really focused in that area, with the exception of the cannon, which was up on the hill. So it ended up being good for him all around. And unfortunately, the Tomb Kings were treated much less kindly by the Dawn Attack rolls. So we start off over here with his unit of 40 skeletal warriors with full command and spears. With them is Prince Telek Utan, his Tomb Prince with the Armor of Destiny, who is serving as his general, and a Tomb Herald with the Standard of the Undying Legion on him. You can also see there in the center he has a unit of 10 skeletal archers, which I frankly thought was very, very few. Because I mean they're only shooting strength 3 hits, and then behind that near the hill is a Hyro Titan that is a really cool model. I don't know if it's real Games Workshop, but it looks pretty awesome. Skip totally scored when he got this army from a buddy of his. And you can also see here, hiding sort of behind the hill next to the Hyro Titan, is his Casket of Souls. On the other side of the hill, you can barely see it in the corner here, is his Screaming Skull Catapult. Then absolutely crammed in this side corner, because it was the only way he could make them fit, is 6 of the skeleton chariots. They have the Banner of Swiftness on them. Crammed behind that is his unit of 8 skeletal horsemen. With that is Lithala, his Lich High Priest, on mount, of course, with the Biting Blade, Channeling Staff, Lore of Preservation, and is his level 4 of Nehekara, and is serving as his Hierophant. And this picture is just to remind myself that he has 3 sepulchral stalkers that he is using Entombed Beneath the Sands for. So we have a couple of vanguards to start off. The fast cavalry from the Tomb Kings just use their vanguard to get the heck out from behind the chariots so they can move around if need be. And the dwarves vanguard up their gyrocopter on the other side. The dwarves see that this unit of spearmen is totally undefended and unsupported, so he's planning on just hanging around there and steaming them right off the table. And frankly, given how many of those dudes the Steam template can cover, he's got a pretty good chance of doing just that. So, dwarves took first turn, and the mighty dwarven offensive is an 1.5-inch slide to the side by the hammerers. He wants to kind of get him closer because his Master Unagrungi is in that unit with the red banner BSB, and he just needs to get it closer to his guys to provide protection. And then over here, both Gyro Bomber and Gyrocopter move in on these poor skeletal bastards. This is just terrible placing due in total to the scenario, but I still feel really bad for the poor bone boxes because they're about to melt. So we start off with Dwarven Magic, and that sounds so weird to say, but the Dwarven spell, the Magic Missile, ends up blasting, I think that's 3 or 4 skeletons off the back of that unit to get started. And then in shooting, the Gyrocopter follows up with a Steam Blast and takes off, I believe, another 7. So 11 skeletons down before bottom of turn 1. And over on here, a cannon sails at some chariots and takes out a single chariot. And then we switch back to this side, and the organ gun opens up on the skeletons and takes off another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5... I think just another 6. It wasn't a great roll with the organ gun. But it's still, I mean, this unit is down to about half at this point, or potentially even less. So we go to Tomb King's turn 1, and the skeletal chariots move forward. The fast cab with the mage in it moves basically behind them to take cover from all of the shooting, and also to get close enough to the Hyro Titan so that when it moves, the Lich Priest will be within 12 of it for the bonus that it gives. And here you see the Hyro Titan moving halfway, so they're now just barely within 12 inches of each other. So that plus D3 to cast is definitely going to be helpful, I think. And over here, the poor skeletons try desperately to run, but they get a 4-inch movement, and there is no way they're getting out of line of fire of any of that stuff that wants to kill them on that side. And in the center here, these 10 brave skeletal archers move forward, hoping to have some sort of impact on the game, but it's doubtful. So during Magic, the Tomb Kings get off, I think it's the 5-up ward save on the chariots, and manage to regenerate the chariot that was shot by the cannon back. So that unit's back to full strength. Yay! Then over here, during shooting, the Screaming Skull Catapult kills a single Thunderer, who then fail the panic check at -1 leadership, turn and run. They come within, like you see here, 2 inches of the table edge, but don't go off this time. But they leave the Rune Lord on anvil pretty much without his defensive wall in front of him. Maybe the Tomb Kings can capitalize on that. So we go to Dwarfs turn 2, and really the only movement you see here is the Thunderers rallied. But they're in kind of an annoying position because they can't move and fire, so it's going to be at least another turn before they can get into a position where they'll be able to impact the game again. Then over here, to add insult to injury, the gyrocopter moves out of the way, and the bomber does a bombing run over the skeletons. It goes real wide, but still glances like a blow on the edge and kills 2 of them. And then over here, the cannon decides it wants no more of that Screaming Skull catapult BS, and single shots it, inflicts 6 wounds, and it's over and done with. So with the rest of shooting being relatively uneventful, I think they burn off a few more skeletons. We go into Tomb King's turn 2, and he starts it off by another pathetic 4-inch move, trying to get those skeletons into something before they're just melted off the table. And then we have a move up of the skeletal chariots here. They're positioning themselves to get within charge range of the hammerers at this point, I believe. And in the back here, the skeletal horsemen are following up just so they can stay within buffing range, I guess. They're a lot closer than I probably would have put them with all this shooting. And the Hyro Titan finishes climbing the hill. So you may be asking yourself as you look at this picture, why in the hell are the sepulchral stalkers there? It's because he tried to actually place them next to the organ gun to try and get some shooting off, and scattered them in the worst possible distance and direction, so they end up within charge range of both the dwarf units. Oh, poor Tomb Kings. The universe itself is lying against you, and there's nothing your player can do. And I think this is just me taking a better picture of the skeletons and their continued 4-inch march. So during the magic phase, Dwarf Anti-Magic manages to hold back the Tomb Kings, and we go into shooting, and the Sepulchral Stalkers do their stare at the hammers and kill 2 hammers. Definitely was not good, and that's really all that I think they end up doing. Oh, they ended up getting a bunch of ward saves from the Grungy rune that's on the dwarf standard bearer, so it should have been more really, but that ward save really went out of its way to save those hammers. So we go into Dwarf turn 3, and the dwarves are going to remind the undead why it's bad to pop up in front of a dwarf line. So yeah, he ended up getting a front charge with the long beards, a flank charge with the hammers, and those stalkers are not long for this world. Over on the side, it's looking a little crowded, but the Thunderers reformed into like 2 lines long so they could start skirting around the edge of the anvil so they can sort of get back into this thing. And here the Gyro Bomber does a bombing run over the chariots, hits them dead on, and manages to kill another one. Or I guess the same one, since it was back to full strength at this point. And then this gyrocopter, either that or the terrifying wrist that's in front of it, ends up hitting this skeletal unit and peeling off, looks like another 4. Okay, so I wanted to show a before picture of this unit before the organ gun opens up this round. And this is what is left afterwards. 2 skeletons from the unit, the Tomb Prince, the Prince and the Tomb Herald. And then the cannon opens up over here, killing 1 more chariot and putting a wound on the second one in line. And then during close combat, the stalkers are killed, the dwarves lose a single, I think that's a Longbeard, for their trouble, and the 2 dwarf units reform to face the threat of the oncoming chariots. So, during Tomb King turn 3, the chariots charge the front of the hammers, so not necessarily the smartest thing to do. They run over the edge of the poison uh, lake to do so, which causes dangerous terrain, and one of the chariots dies. So then they hit the River of Light and find out it's a River of Light and get Time Warp cast on them. So there you have Always Strikes First and extra attacks, and get run through the water. So they're down to like another chariot dead. So only 2 chariots managed to hit in. Now here's a question we came up with. The stuff like Always Strikes First from Speed of Light, because it affects the models and not like the characters or anything on them, we applied that to the mounts as well. I don't know what the actual rules are because it doesn't really specify in the mount section or the chariot section. But if anybody has a rule they want to quote back at me for that one, it would be appreciated. But we kind of do it that way anyway. So I figure as long as you're always making the same call, it's not a wrong call, right? Over here, the poor tomb skeletons, whatever you want to call them, are still valiantly trying to make it somewhere where they can matter in this game. The skeletal horsemen here move up. Again, personally, I think they're up a little farther than necessary, since most of the Tomb King spells, I think they're like 18 or 24 inches, so he doesn't really need to be following the chariots in so far, but that's kind of what he wants to do, so no harm to it. So the Tomb King magic phase goes off, and he gets the 5-up ward save and the extra attacks spell off, and the dwarves can't stop him. So not only does he regenerate 2 more chariots to come in here in this mess, but he buffs the crap out of them while he's there. So this went from being sort of the last hurrah of a dying Tomb King to something that may actually have a benefit. You end up getting 4 chariots worth of impact hits in, plus all those attacks from the now poisoned Always Striking First, extra attacks twice over models could actually put a hurting on these hammerers. So we're getting kind of excited in this, and it would be really funny that a lake and a river came to the aid of the Tomb Kings of all armies. And during shooting, the 10 archers who have been doing nothing so far this game finally managed to kill a single Longbeard out of that unit. And then we go to close combat, and these chariots demolish the crap out of these hammerers. Killed, 5, 10, 14, leaving behind only a few, I think it's 4 of the actual unit, and the BSB. Maybe 5. It might be a full rank, but it doesn't matter because they're stubborn and they're dwarves with a reroll. They're not going anywhere. The dwarf character is whiffing left, right, and down the center, but the remaining hammerers do manage to kill off 1 of the chariots, so he's down to only 3 left there. So we go to dwarf turn 4, and the only movement he does is he moves his gyrocopter to blast down those last few dudes hanging out with the Tomb Prince, and then he tries to do a bombing run on the archers and kills 3 of them with the gyro bomber. Then we go into shooting. Cannon goes off and puts 2 wounds on the Hyro Titan. And over here, organ gun is absolutely terrible, so between the organ gun and the gyrocopter, they only manage to kill the last 2 skeletons of the unit, leaving the Tomb Herald and the Tomb Prince by themselves. Then in combat, the chariots, who are still buffed with their own spells, end up killing off the rest of the hammers, so all that's left there is the BSB. But because there weren't that many kills to get, he's still needing a reroll, like a rerollable 5, something like that. And he ends up nailing it and doesn't go anywhere. So, turn 4 for the Tomb Kings. The Tomb King and the Tomb Prince and the Tomb Herald manage a long bomb charge, needing an 11, and slam into the front of the organ gun. So maybe they'll actually do something this game after all. Over here, the Hyrule Titan starts coming off the hill. The archers go into the water, and they get time warp cast on them. So they're at like +1 to hit, or one additional attack, double movement, all that stuff. Ultimately doesn't matter because they're archers, but it's just funny. And over here, his casters and horses glide a little bit closer. Or no, they tried to charge. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The Hyrule Titan tried to charge the gyro bomber, and it fled. And the archers and the horses tried to charge it as well. So sent it way over here, but nothing got caught. So sorry about that confusion. So during magic, he ends up getting the extra attack spell off, and I think the ward save off again. So 2 spells off on these chariots, which let him generate 2 more chariots from their healing, which puts the unit back into the water. Soon as it hits the water, we roll for what spell is going to hit, and it gets I think it's the one Light of Battle where it's Initiative 10, Weapon Skill 10. It's either that one or it might have been Time Warp again, but either way, it's getting like the best buffs out of the River of Light just from regenning its own dudes. So that's really funny. Unfortunately, I just don't know that they're going to be able to bring enough hurt with only their Strength 3 attacks against this dwarf character to really loosen themselves from the position they're in. So we go into combat, and even with an absolutely stupid number of attacks at stupid high weapon skill, the Strength 3 just isn't enough to get it done, and the chariots can't do any damage to the BSB, but the BSB ends up not doing any damage to them because he totally whiffs all his attacks. So nothing really happens there. The BSB ends up succeeding his reroll, or his reform check, and slides just a hair so that more of the Longbeards can come in on the next dwarf turn. And over here, showing the might and power of the Tomb Kings, they slaughter the 3 organ gun crew and manage to take those points. So I guess I forgot dwarf movement. But all he did was rally his 2 flyers and charge that unit of Longbeards into the chariots. So we go into shooting, and the Thunderers end up shooting the Tomb Herald to death. And so all that's left over there is the Tomb Prince now. Over here, Cannon takes out the Hyrule Titan. And this just shows where the gyrocopter is. I don't know where the bomber went at this point. I thought he rallied. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he kept fleeing. So we go into combat. The chariots end up killing 1 dwarf, and between the dwarves and Crumble, another chariot or 2 dies, so there's only 2 left. And obviously, because they're undead, the dwarves are going to have to kill them to a man, but they still can't. The chariots can't even kill the BSB now. It's just even with as many buffs as he's getting from different sources, Strength 3 is just not enough to make it happen against dwarves with good armor. Then the dwarves reform to get more attacks, and this, I think, gives the potential for the Tomb King's player to take advantage. If he can do enough good damage, there's not much static combat res here. So the Longbeards aren't stubborn because they don't have any ranks. So this could give him the opportunity he needs on his next turn to break them. And that would just be an upset of epic proportions. So Tomb Prince turn, what is this, 4 or 5? Maybe 5. And starts off with some cinematic charge of the Tomb Prince into the Anvil of Doom and Graw's Anvil Hand. And the Tomb King magic phase ends up getting off I think it's the ward save, or no, it's the smiting one. So he's getting extra attacks. Rolled 4 wounds on the regen, so gets a full chariot back. And now that he has 3 ranks, he can put another one in the back, drops the chariot with 1 wound into the River of Light, and boom, gets Time Warp again. So this could be the opportunity the Tomb Kings are looking for. They've got a lot of attacks the way we're playing it, and if he can do the damage, he might be able to swing this combat. So, I mean, at this point, we're just all laughing. Well, except for Michael. He's just frustrated that the river is the only thing keeping the freaking Tomb Kings in this game right now. But Skip and I think it's hilarious. Then over here, during shooting, the archers get a wound off on the gyrocopter, which is frankly just should be an embarrassment to Dwarven engineering. There's only 5 of them left, and they're still freaking putting wounds on you, needing 6s to wound. So, in combat over here, the Tomb Prince is completely incapable of doing any damage to Graz, and he takes a wound for his trouble. So, charge and the wound balance out, and the two bounce off each other. Then over here, the chariots do a little bit better. They do manage to kill 3 of the Longbeards, but the Longbeards show up for work and end up taking out the one chariot with 1 wound on it and killing another one. So they're back down to 2 chariots. So we go to the dwarf turn, and Gyro Bomber tries to fly over these guys and destroy them with a bombing run, and ends up hitting himself and inflicting 2 wounds on himself. Over here, the gyrocopter flies around so he can breathe steam on the skeletal horseman. And then during shooting, breathes a crapload of steam on the skeletal horseman, killing all but 3 of them, and the wizard, who is the one on the far end, from what you're seeing. His aim was basically to get him low enough where he can't take a lookout, sir, and then try and hit the Hierophant with a cannon and kill it and start crumble. And when he pegs the Hierophant with the cannon, gets through the ward save, but only inflicts 2 wounds, so the cannon fails to do the job. And we go into combat, and with the buff still up on the 2 chariots, they go to work and kill 3 more Longbeards. But the Longbeards have reformed into ranks now, and they're not going anywhere. And so over here, both Graz and the Tomb Prince are unable to hurt each other, so that we have a second consecutive round of combat where they bounce off each other. So, Tomb King's turn 6. Skeletal Archers attempt a swift reform to turn around and shoot the gyrocopter, and fail, so they just turn around to stare at him. And here, freaking Tomb King magic, man. He ends up getting the smiting spell and the 5-up ward save off, which gives him enough chariots to get back into the River of Light, and again rolls Time Warp. So this is really his last possible opportunity to do any damage to these guys. But Skip and I are rolling at this point. He's ended up hitting that water between the 2 units like 5 times, and 4 of the 5 times he's ended up with Time Warp, and the other time he ended up with the Weapon Skill and Initiative 10 spell, and it's just ridiculous. So we go into combat. The Tomb King and Graz fluff off each other again. This combat, the chariots try. They kill the whole back rank of dwarves, but that dwarf leadership, they end up taking a wound in return. Dwarf leadership ends up having them stick with the BSB right there. And that's what ends the game. And here is just a final shot to show you what the board looks like at the end of the game. Not much of the Tomb Kings left on the board, but not many dwarves either. So it looked pretty tight. We decided we had to go to the points to find out who won. "Hold the line," Graz called out to the remaining Dawi as he managed to fight off the undead lord who had decided to strike against him. With his anvil uncontested, the Rune Lord quickly began to release the power it held. With the added strength of the anvil and the remaining firepower of the cannon and the thunderers, the Tomb Kings were pushed back from the mountain. But this battle had cost more than Graz was willing to pay. "Oda!" Graz called, seeing the army's standard-bearer staggering back. "Graz, is there something you require?" Oda called as the remaining Longbeards began to pull the wounded and the dead from the field. "Aye, tell the king I'm ready to move the anvil. The Hammerfell can watch over themselves." With a nod, the Thane continued on towards their main encampment, the next watch passing by with gear in tow. Oda was stopped by an injured hammerer who had stood with him earlier. "Thane, are we finally to quit this accursed hillside?" With a simple nod, the hammerer had his answer, and he paced off to tell the others. A few days later, Oda arrived at the king's new encampment. Agram always knew how to pick a defensible position. High on the valley ridge, with only one real way to attack. Not only was the location almost perfect, the defenses were significant. Rocky outcrops hid various cannons, bunkers had been dug in. It was a miniature stronghold. "Oda," King Agram called, "you have word on if Graz is ready to begin the excavation?" The Thane simply nodded once more. "Good. I'll have the miners begin the work." It was at that moment Oda realized why Agram had chosen this spot. It was sitting right atop a crossroads of the ancient underground pathways. Agram was planning to use it to find the ancient relics of his people. He was looking for a way to completely turn the tide of these dark days. Oda simply nodded with pride, a slight smile visible beneath his beard. Alright, so it ended up being a pretty significant victory for the Dwarves. Not a great showing for Skip's Tomb Kings the first time out, but it was a funny game to watch. I know Michael was absolutely frustrated about that River of Light being so siding with the Tomb Kings. But I think really what did the Tomb Kings in on this one was purely the scenario. Tomb Kings definitely seemed to benefit from being able to have all their forces together. And having basically his one melee force way off out on the side did him no favors. Combine that with the fact that this was easily the most shooty, gun-line-ish army that Michael has ever fielded before. Definitely was not what was expected. It was kind of fun to see the Tomb Kings. I like the chariots. I'm a big fan of chariots in general, so it was nice to see them come in and try and get the work done. I think the biggest weakness that Skip had here is he really didn't make use of the Casket of Souls at all. He never used the bound spell in it. In fact, his magic, other than the buff machines that was going on with the chariots, his magic really didn't get a whole lot done. And I guess I kind of expect, or I have been led to expect more from Tomb King magic than that. So, as far as the Dwarfs list, it was pretty solid. I think Michael was experimenting with something more akin to how I kind of build my dwarves in the smaller units and that sort of thing. So, we'll see. But this is sort of the start of some changes to the dwarves in the campaign. There are going to be some big shakeups, but we are seeing a little bit of a divestiture of the Odheim from the Hammerfells, and that is going to lead to some different roads. And I don't want to spoil too much, but there's definitely going to be some changes in the future. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one and enjoyed where the narrative is going with it. We had a good time making it. It'll be interesting to see the Odheim kind of trying to claim some positivity and some of their history in the next coming battle report, so I'm looking forward to that. If this is the first video you've seen and you like what you saw, please subscribe, like the video, and leave any comments you might have below. I do try and get back to most of the comments that are left. If nothing else, a thumbs up on things that I think are good, or any questions. Other thing I wanted to just bring to attention is we are continuing to run the banner contest. I have a video on the channel called Banner Contest Announcement. Please go and check that out. First prize is actually going to be a hand drawn slash painted banner made by my wife to fit one of your units that you have described in the contest. But definitely go check it out. It's going to be fun. We're hoping to get a lot of interest and a lot of work done, or a lot of submissions done from folks to kind of help stress your fluff muscles. Although that really sounded terrible. Um, but just kind of getting people thinking about and building onto the fluff of their armies, and it's a good way to do it. So definitely go check that out, and remember that you can send your entries to Josh L. Merritt, that's Merritt, at gmail.com. Thank you guys for watching this one, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye now.